Penn State couldn't have made a better hire to replace J1 Sider. Stan Drayton, former Temple head coach, is set to be Penn State's next running backs coach.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State football. My name is Zach Seyko, and I'm your host of Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are going live to react to Stan Drayton being hired as Penn State's next running backs coach. If you have a question, comment, reaction, of course, contribute your thoughts to the live chat. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So Stan Drayton is as well traveled as they get. And I talked about this in an episode leading up to the week that Penn State's primary focus should really be Stan Drayton only. And then if it doesn't work out, then pivot to the likes of maybe a Chad Scott over at West Virginia, for example. But this is an A-plus hire. This is a home run hire. This doesn't get any better when you are replacing one of the best running backs coaches in the country, one of the best recruiters in J1 Sider. This is how you offset that loss. This is how you minimize what could be an issue. And honestly, he gives you an upgrade in some places, in quite a few places. The argument can be made that this is actually an upgrade, that this is a boost for Penn State, as opposed to having J1 Sider in for another season. So let's discuss that. Plus, there are some long-term questions that I want to address here because it's interesting just what the certainty is. But let's talk about what's actually in place. So Stan Drayton being the running backs coach, you are getting somebody that has been at the NFL, that has been on national championship teams, Ohio State of the past. Recently, before Temple, he was at Texas. Now, they didn't win a national title there, but he was a part of national championship teams at Florida, at Ohio State. So he knows what it takes to win national championships. He's been at the NFL level. He spent 2 seasons with the Chicago Bears. So you're getting that NFL coaching experience and then the head coaching experience. James Franklin makes it very apparent that ideally, especially with your coordinators, Justin Lustig with special teams, right? Andy Kotelnicki is on his way to being a head coach. Jim Knowles, kind of the same thing, right? These guys are self-sufficient. You don't have to micromanage them. And that is what you're getting with Stan Drayton. You don't have to constantly be wondering, okay, what is he doing? You now have another head coach within this system, a head coach-like figure, truly because he just came off of a head coaching stint at Temple for 3 seasons? Yeah, for 3 seasons. So Stan Drayton, A-plus hire because he checks off every box imaginable, well-traveled, and he's he was born and raised in the state of Ohio, but he's spent so much time in Pennsylvania. He coached at the University of Pennsylvania, coached at Villanova before moving on and going to the SEC and everything and having his time spent in the NFL too. But and then being the head coach at Temple. So the connections to Pennsylvania are strong and ones that he's already built. And most importantly, to the east side of Pennsylvania. Penn State, James Franklin, with the help of Terry Smith, of course, and other recruiting coordinators. Pittsburgh and the western side of the state, for the most part, are in pretty good standing. But the east part of Pennsylvania, so Philadelphia, and then starting to branch out in New Jersey, could be stronger. And I think that's what Penn State really wanted to accomplish here in this offseason. You get that with Jim Knowles because of his connections to St. Joe's Prep. You get that now in addition to with Stan Drayton because of his time at Temple, his previous times at Penn, at Villanova. So he's already built relationships and connections through the eastern part of Pennsylvania where Penn State wants to continue to push into. You have Deion Barnes as well. Deion Barnes has certainly closed that gap a little bit into the Philadelphia area, but it is not as strong as they would like it to be. Now you strengthen it. So the argument can be made because of what Drayton gives you as another head coach. That is immensely valuable. Yes, he's been a part of national championship staffs, and that's something that J1 Sider can't necessarily say. Also, the head coaching experience. So, Sider has interviewed for head coaching jobs, but he hasn't done it. He doesn't have the tangible results. He was as close as he could get being the associate head coach at Penn State, co-offensive coordinator, running backs coach, and Notre Dame wanted somebody like that. The Fighting Irish made a move, and they're going to the reported deal over seven figures. It is at least $1 million per season. It's a multi-year deal. So that's what we're going to talk about with Stan Drayton, is what is the long-term outlook here? Because Drayton, he can develop players. He's worked with the likes of Bijan Robinson. He's worked with Ezekiel Elliott in the past. He was part of that Ohio State team that won a national title, and Ezekiel Elliott was on that team. So Drayton certainly has, I mean, it's not that Sider doesn't. I'm not comparing Drayton versus Sider anymore here. But the long-term outlook, I look at this move more so as short-term, because Stan Drayton, to go from head coach at Temple to a running backs coach. Now, it's at Penn State. It's at a Big Ten program. They can compensate him accordingly. But what is the long-term outlook here? That's the biggest question. If he'll be at Penn State for 3, 4, 5 seasons, right? That would be ideal. But it's beneath Drayton. Drayton's been an associate head coach. He's moved up the coaching ranks. He's been in the NFL. He's been a head coach at Temple for multiple seasons. This wasn't a one and done situation over at Temple. So Drayton, I wonder how long, because people are going to contact him. People are going to say, "Hey, are you interested in maybe it's an OC job, maybe it's an offensive coordinator job?" I think that's maybe not as likely, because he was never an offensive coordinator along the way, but he was an assistant head coach at Texas. He was the run game coordinator. So we'll see. That's what his responsibilities are going to be at Penn State, to focus on the running back position solely. But I can't imagine that other programs aren't going to be contacting him and trying to offer him, a chance at another promotion. We'll see. Like I said, he's been a head coach, and it's where you get to boost your resume once again, where it doesn't necessarily work. Manny Diaz. Tom Allen didn't exactly go that route, but wasn't working out as a head coach, came back to Penn State, landed on his feet. Stan Drayton kind of follows this, even though he's a position coach. He's not an actual coordinator. James Franklin continues to do this, where he is going and getting coordinator. He's creating a coaching tree, a strong coaching tree. Eventually, Andy Kotelnicki is going to do that. We'll see what the future holds for the likes of an Anthony Poindexter, but as we've seen, that James Franklin is able to crank out head coaches and develop assistants on staff so that they can further their coaching career. So it is not, I'm eager to see what Stan Drayton's situation is ultimately going to be long term. I think that's definitely a question mark, because the running back room's certainly going to take, a sharp turn with Singleton, Katron Allen moving on after this season. And, you have a recruit, and Messiah Mickens being pretty vocal about his relationship with J1 Sider and how important that was to him. He's setting up visits. So his recruitment is back open after being shut down just a few days before Sider had made the move to Notre Dame. So, but Stan Drayton will take care of the coaching and the development. I think that's what the goal is here. It's the coaching and the development first in the short term. This is everything you could ask for as Penn State for James Franklin. This is everything you could ask for when it comes to a national title run. You went out and you made the highest bid possible for the best defensive coordinator in college football in Jim Knowles. You've anchored down the defense. You retain Anthony Poindexter in the process. You sign him to an extension. J1 Sider, this late in the cycle, this late in the offseason, or this far into the offseason, and you lose one of your better assistants on. I mean, they're all Phil Troutwine, right? Anthony Poindexter, Terry Smith, they're all comparable to an extent. So you lose a strong assistant on staff who's been at Penn State for 7 years, that consistency, that continuity, and then you replace them with one of the best possible just coaches period, Whatever he was going to do, if they brought him in as an analyst, as a consultant with what they're doing, Penn State just continues to add these like-minded coaches that have the experience, that have the tenure, that have the proven track record of developing players at an elite level. So whether Stan Drayton is at Penn State for 1 year, 2 years, maybe it's long-term, 3 to 5 years, who knows? But I think it all works itself out. It all pays off if they win a national championship for this 25-26 season. Live chat's open. So if you got a question, you got a comment, we'll talk about this more in depth as well. Get your reactions in this live show. And we'll talk about Stan Drayton coming to Penn State more after a word from our sponsors. And today's show is brought to you by Factor Meals. Are you looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Well, Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just a couple of minutes. With 40 options across 80 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle. So whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto, plus Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled throughout the day. Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. That's probably the best part and something that everybody is going to love. If you try those Protein Plus meals, they're packed with flavor and they will keep you feeling full throughout the day. It's the convenience. It's unbeatable. There's no prep. There's no mess. Just great food in a matter of minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com. That is factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege 50 off. So use code LockedOnCollege 50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. Code LockedOnCollege 50 off at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege 50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. And there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss that opening tip-off and want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Using FanDuel's live betting feature is great because it keeps you in every moment. It keeps the game exciting. Whether you're backing your team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, you'll feel like you've never missed a chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can bet $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Again, thank you for spending your early Friday afternoon here, Locked On Nittany Lions. Not to get off topic. We're getting off topic, but that's okay. This is what the live chat's for. So we'll go in any different direction because the Big Ten squad video was crazy. The Badger fan was saying Penn State had no chance. I had to process that there to win the conference while they were only one of the three represented with the team that has won it recently. Yeah, it was an interesting discussion. It was an interesting debate. I was surprised by, in general, nobody buys into the fact that Penn State should be considered at this point in time. When you add the likes of Jim Knowles, when you add the likes of Stan Drayton, when you add people like Greg Gattuso in a consultation role, do you see what Penn State is building in terms of its coaching staff? Head coach, veteran experience, former head coach, former head coach. What other staff is doing that? What other staff is this strong at this point? And I know there are different criticisms. Well, it's a weak link here. Marcus Hagans holds the staff back, and I'm sorry. That is do not look at it that way. Penn State couldn't have built a stronger coaching staff going into this season. Whether it was Penn State, I think Penn State kind of gets lucky in this sense. Timing's everything. Stan Drayton's not available. Temple says, we're going to make this work for another season. Okay, fine, so be it. But he was available. And Penn State also had to convince him, because I also thought it was pretty interesting that Stan Drayton was a free agent since November of 2024. Temple let him go early in the season, or they let him go before the season was over anyway, or close to it. So with that being said, he could have landed anywhere. There were NFL jobs that were open. He's coached in the NFL. There were other situations in college football where he could have continued to make a name for himself, or at least built himself back up, and decides to stay at Penn, and decides to go at Penn State. So, and James Franklin also has to make that pitch to say it is worth either just staying unemployed, because as we've seen, his name's escaping me, Ed Orgeron over at LSU, hasn't taken a job. And I know he's got a millions and millions on top of for his buyout, but that does take some leverage. That takes a conversation. That takes some convincing to go get the likes of Stan Drayton to say, take somewhat of a demotion. Come to Penn State. You were just a head coach, but be the running backs coach. I imagine he's going to be the run game coordinator. Because those are all the things that J1 Sider was. So aside from being an associate head coach, assistant head coach, he's going to assume all of those roles. But the best part of this is something that's been pointed out. So it's not my original take, but something that's been pointed out to me is that you just get a fresh perspective for the running back room. This isn't a dunk on J1 Sider. There are questions about how he's developed Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. I don't have any questions. I think that Allen and Singleton have both improved significantly. Singleton came in as a running back, yes, with all the athleticism in the world. He was a former 5-star, but he was certainly a raw prospect. And Singleton got better at blocking. He got better at pass catching. He got better at running routes. He became more of this complete running back. That's on Singleton to obviously train and study and perfect those techniques, but somebody had to teach him that along the way. Sider deserves credit for that. Same thing with Katron Allen. So any limitations that Katron Allen has mostly have to do with athleticism. I mean, they say you can't teach speed, right? So J1 Sider, I think, did a phenomenal job getting Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton to where they are, but now Stan Drayton can push the bar. He can take them to the next level. He can continue the development of a Quentin Martin. Corey Smith is on a great track. Tyke Hayes looks great as an early enrollee, true freshman. But I do wonder about the long-term plan, right? What's going to go on here? You have Messiah Mickens for the class of 2026. You have Keemon Spell for the class of 2027. Is Drayton the long-term solution here? Because like I said, it is a fact that this move is beneath Drayton. It has nothing to do with Penn State. He has been a head coach. Being a running backs coach is not what he's worth anymore. And that's understandable, right? He's in his 50s. He's been coaching for a long time, and he has a proven track record. So eventually some destination out there is going to try to push Penn State and say, okay, how much are you paying him, right? What roles? There's going to be another job out there that might offer him a head coaching position at some point in time. So Stan Drayton at least anchors all of this down for at least one season and gets you closer to a national title. But what happens? What does this look like in year 2, year 3, year 4? Because what's interesting is this is only a 1-year deal. Now, I've been told that this more or less, this more or less has to do with the fact that he was bought out of his contract at Temple. So this allows him to not only coach at Penn State, but keep his buyout at Temple. But it's interesting because Manny Diaz had the buyout, and so I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a legal expert, so I don't know how all the contract detail intricacies work in this sense. But that's what I've been told, is that this isn't too much of a concern, because it is interesting that ESPN had to clarify that this is a 1-year deal. It's a 1-year deal, okay. Well, what are Drayton's aspirations? Again, does he want to take that step forward? Does he like being in Pennsylvania? Maybe at the end of the day, he likes being at Pennsylvania and Penn State's going to be good enough of an institution for him to coach at for quite some time. If that's the case, be transparent with recruits. Say, hey, we expect Coach Drayton to be here for 1 to 2 seasons, and it's going to be a year-by-year basis. And then when he lands that next job that fits where he is in his coaching career, he's going to move on. Because the running back room could look very different. Stan Drayton could get offered a more secure job, or I guess a more prestigious job, right? You are going to lose Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen. So the running back room is going to take a complete turn after this season. And that's what happens, right? That's the natural attrition of college football. Coaches move on, coaches move up, coaches get fired, players have to move on. It's not like the NFL where you get a player and then you make them the face of your franchise. College football, college athletics are the way that they are because players are typically, they give you the 2 or 3 best years of in terms of on the football field, and then they just move on. They just disappear because that's college. I know. Whoa, crazy thinking, right? The Trojan guy was off the rails too, not giving Aller any credit for their win over them, even though Aller was the one throwing to Warren and Fleming. So we're back to the Big Ten squad. He's made it very apparent to me that the only reason that Penn State won that game out in Southern California is because Tyler Warren was playing. Somebody had to throw him the ball. Somebody had to block USC's front 7. Tyler Warren had to get open, and somebody had to scheme him open. If it was so easy, if it's so locked on USC, if it was so simple, why didn't they stop it? If it was so easy, your tight end just went off that day. You make it so simple, yet you couldn't stop it. Love the pickup. It's a great pickup, even though there are question marks for what is the long-term solution here. Because you do have some really, you have Penn State, they have some really good recruits. Messiah Mickens, I think, is going to be conservatively a top 10 running back in the nation. And Keemon Spell, I know this is about the class of 2027, and I don't want to put that pressure expectations on, right? I think he'd be a rising junior at this point. He could be a top 50 player in the nation. He's already ranked that way. I think the consensus rankings have him within the top 30. Don't exactly quote me on that. But he's going to be one of the better players in the country, not just at his position group. He might be a top overall recruit in the country. So those things matter. Where Penn State has still a strong fighting chance to make sure that Messiah Mickens and Keemon Spell are content and they like what the plan is at the running back spot, is that these are Pennsylvania guys. These are Pennsylvania prospects. So J1 Sider is going to make a phone call. He's going to say, Notre Dame wants you. So that's where I don't really like the J1 Sider move, is that you still have to go up against him. It's a friend that becomes an enemy and not a net neutral. Where if he takes the Florida Atlantic job, because that's what he interviewed for, the Florida Atlantic job this offseason, and he was very close to getting it. I think he was the 2nd or 3rd candidate on their list. And if Sider takes that head coaching job, then he doesn't become an enemy. He's focused on the head coaching role, and he's probably going to be mostly concerned with Florida and its recruiting, because FAU doesn't have that strong of a footprint. He's not going to go up to Pennsylvania and say, hey, recruit some of the best prospects. Maybe he gets a player or two that are some lower 4 stars. But to kind of condense all of it, now it's Notre Dame, the brand of Notre Dame versus Penn State, because the brand of Florida Atlantic versus Penn State, okay, that's you see where I'm going with this. So now you have to compete against Sider, who has the same brand power, the same resources, the same recruiting footprint, and he's already built those relationships and connections in Pennsylvania. Now Stan Drayton offsets that, but is he going to be here long term? It's a 1-year deal compared to Sider, who has a multi-year deal, and he's getting compensated accordingly. Notre Dame made it financially worth his while to make a lateral move like that. So it's not ideal, but Penn State made the best possible move. Out of all the moves that they could have made for this running backs coach spot, when the goal in mind is to win a national championship, let's forget about what do 5 years from now, what does 2030 look like for Penn State running back recruiting? I don't want to make that the focus. Let's focus on what Stan Drayton does well. He's a former head coach. He develops talent. He gets the most out of the players that he works with. He is well traveled. He's going to just add to a list of smart position coaches. There is not I'm not really concerned with the people that say that Marcus Hagans is an issue. He's a weak link. He's bad. Marcus Hagans inherited an awful wide receiver situation, but he adds to this Stan Drayton adds to this coaching staff that just somehow continues to get stronger. They lose Tom Allen, upgrade with Jim Knowles. They lose Jaywan Sider. You can make the argument they upgraded in the short term with Stan Drayton. I think it's fair to say you might be able to make an argument that Sider is a better recruiter, but Stan Drayton's the better coach and the better developer. That's not to say that Sider is a bad running backs coach or bad at developing players, because Journey Brown was on his way. I know that they missed on the likes of a Kevon Lee. Noah Kane dealt with injuries. Journey Brown had to medically retire because of off-the-field health concerns. So not everything, it's not necessarily, it's not all Sider's fault for some of the prospects that didn't pan out. But then you recruit Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. They're going to be 4-year consecutive co-starters. That's got to matter for something. That's got to count for something. So I'm going to wrap it up here briefly. It's hard to take those guys seriously sometimes because we're talking about the Big Ten squad again, because they take a lot less analytical view than our boy does. Well, I appreciate that. I think you got a real future, man, in broadcasting. Keep up the good work. Wow, thank you. That's going to make my Friday here. Thank you. I appreciate that, Sam. Well, he's a better choice than Ohio State's hire Matt Patricia to replace Knowles. That was an interesting move. I guess NFL coaching experience really goes a long way here. Stan Drayton coached in the NFL. Matt Patricia was there for a long time in the NFL. But he hasn't really panned out since the Patriots. I think he's a system coordinator. Eagles, Lions, didn't matter. Matt Patricia, the only time he was successful was with the New England Patriots. So I appreciate the comments, the conversation, the interaction today. For anybody celebrating, of course, happy Valentine's Day. Thank you for spending a portion of your Friday afternoon here on Locked On Nittany Lions. So this is just an initial reaction. Stan Drayton is the new running backs coach for Penn State. A+ hire, long-term projection it's in question. It's not to say that it can't be a 3, 4, 5-year plan, but if this is a 1 to 2 year stint, it's understandable. So we'll see. We'll react to it as it unfolds, but Penn State couldn't have made a better hire for the short term. This gets them closer to a national title. Stan Drayton as the running backs coach, run game coordinator, helping out with the offensive game plan overall. This makes the coaching staff better for 2025. This puts Penn State closer to a national championship for this upcoming season. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm the host of Locked On Nittany Lions. If you are new to this show, please subscribe to the YouTube channel wherever you get your podcasts. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day, and we're talking all your favorite Penn State sports teams every day. Penn State football, Penn State wrestling, Penn State basketball, all right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.